West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théères, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire.
We have a brand new filing in this Dominion Fox lawsuit. It has bombshell revelations. This is what you've seen on your screen. If you've been watching MSNBC, we've been waiting on the filing. We now have it. Our producers are pouring through it. Our experts are standing by. Rupert Murdoch, under oath, says something that may sound obvious, and yet you have to remember it's the exact opposite of what Fox, at least some of its hosts and many of its guests, were presenting at the time on the road to what became a violent insurrection. Under oath in the new filing, Murdoch exposed for admitting the election was not stolen. He knew that. And when it came to the factors of why they did what they did, which this voting company alleges is defamation to the tune of $1.6 billion, well, Murdoch says no one, quote, wants Trump as an enemy. We're pouring through this. We're going to continue to cover this. This is one of those breaking news nights, but I want to bring in our experts right now. A former federal prosecutor, Renato Mariotti, who has an understanding of exactly how these kind of depositions and interviews work, and Che Komanduri, a political strategist, veteran of 3 presidential campaigns, including the Obama campaign, on the political side of the role Fox plays. Che, I want to get to you soon on how much has been exposed about this link, that Fox was really functioning more like a teammate than any independent operator. But Renato, first, your reaction to what Murdoch was forced to sort of concede under oath.
I think that in many ways is the whole ballgame. You have the person who owns Fox saying, we know this is false. And yet, we know already, he admitted elsewhere, his hosts were pushing a false story. And, you know, we've talked before about how high the standard is in the First Amendment context. You need actual malice. You need to show that they knew that something was false or that you had reckless disregard for the truth. Almost an impossible burden to meet, and they've met it here. You literally have the man who's Fox saying this is false.
Let me slow you down, because you're reminding us that sometimes what's a big deal in court is what out-of-court people would call duh. Duh, Trump lost the election. Duh, people oriented towards the facts. Whatever you think of Rupert Murdoch, he has worked with facts and business and numbers his whole life, knew that to be the case. So duh, he knew that. And yet what you're reminding us, and I want you to build on this, Renato, is that the new filing out tonight, and we're still, I mean, I've got it, we're going through it, and our team is going through it, but the new filing, you're saying, has a out-of-court duh that's actually what? Incriminating in the trial that could help them potentially win this trial?
Well, absolutely. I mean, I think it's something that's going to get you past a motion for summary judgment, which is so important. You know, ordinarily in a case like this, if you told me, okay, you know, you're going to sue a media personality, or you're going to sue a news network for covering a story of an interest, you know, there was something regarding public concern, I'd say, okay, very uphill battle, very difficult to do. I view this almost already like a confession sort. You know, you may say, well, of course this man murdered his wife. Well, it's one thing to say, oh yeah, come on. It's another thing to say, proof beyond a reasonable doubt. We have his confession. He confesses to doing it. And that's really how I regard this. You have the man who owns Fox News saying, we knew this was false. And then, of course, he admits his hosts were pushing the story. It's very, very difficult for Fox to overcome.
Yeah, I want to do one more legal with you, and then we'll come to Che. And I want to be transparent with viewers. Nicole was covering this. This is a case that's only gotten hotter as it's gone forward. The kind of stuff that we here in our newsroom and our producers in the beat are going through is this kind of stuff, and it runs over 300 pages, this filing. And just to read off some of these highlights here, Renato, some of the stuff is familiar because we knew there was a Murdoch deposition. Some of it looks new. I don't have all of it, but again, this is how it works when we do breaking news, Renato. You have Bartiromo's interview with Steve Bannon. So that's a public item that is traditional evidence. But then you have things like email from Rupert Murdoch to Suzanne Scott regarding Steve Bannon. I'm curious what you think as we make sense of all this, of what these Dominion lawyers have been able to do. They've clearly drawn some blood. They haven't won the case yet. I've been clear with viewers. There's a whole process here, and defamation cases are hard to win. But Renato, when you see the lawyers here and what we're combing through, they say, oh, here's the public story. You gave Bannon airtime, and he, by the way, is now convicted for defying Congress in the Jan 6 probe and facing other trials. So that's who he is legally. Here's the public thing everyone could watch. And now, here's a high-level email that, but for this case, we would never see from Murdoch to the Fox chief. What are they going after when they get into this stuff?
Well, I think what they're trying to show is that Fox ultimately was on the Republicans team and on the Trump team. I mean, that's really, and I know that, he's going to talk about this in a minute, but when I was pouring through this, just the minutes before this, I mean, this literally came out 15 minutes ago or 20 minutes ago. I've been pouring over it just like you've been, Ari. One thing that really struck me, a very similar example, is Tucker Carlson has a text exchange with somebody. It's unknown who that person is, but that person is going back and forth with Tucker Carlson saying, yeah, there may have been some voter fraud, some little nuggets here or there, but nothing that could have swung the course of the election. Telling that to Tucker Carlson, who, by the way, is still pushing conspiracy theories about this stuff or making insinuations about that. And it's showing that knowledge, but that person is basically going back and forth with Tucker as if they're basically on the same team, as if essentially Tucker is a PR mouthpiece for that person's agenda. It seemed like somebody connected to the Trump campaign.
Right. And as you say, in court, this goes to, did they know it was false? That's one plank. And were they basically malicious or had reckless disregard? As I've told viewers, those are high bars for good reason. And we protect everyone at Fox from Carlson to Brett Baer to state their good faith opinions, share their ideas. But it is not constitutionally allowed under the rules of this country to use these platforms, this power, to knowingly and maliciously defame people for many obvious reasons. In this case, there was business as well as democracy and safety repercussions. Che is going to become the Godot of this segment because, Che, I'm going to hold you out a little longer. We're going to wait for you a little longer because I told viewers, our team at The Beat here, our producers are going through this, and through our fact-checking, we have more from it. So I'm going to read from that to Renato on the legal side. So, Che, just hang in there. This is an element we have right now. Quote, the election was not stolen. That's what Murdoch, as a witness there, says. And this is in the new filing here from moments ago. Not stolen. He admits that Trump was basically being a sore loser. Murdoch also notes he voted by mail because he was out of the country during the election. And at this top level, Renato, some of these details go to the idea that you just mentioned that Mr. Carlson and others are out here lying about what happened on the 6th. But the story that keeps emerging in each of these filings, the new one, which I have pieces from, and the old ones, which we scoured, is that this wasn't a close call. This wasn't Bush v. Gore and someone says, hey, something happened over in Tallahassee, and reporters look into it. And you know what? It didn't happen in Tallahassee, but you looked into it to check, right? Just like I've had Matt Gaetz on, and some of what he says may not check out, but we're having a good faith reporting process. What keeps coming through, Renato, and I'm curious what you think this will do in court or with a jury, is the idea that this wasn't even in bounds. Murdoch and others were voting by mail because they didn't think there was any credence to that conspiracy theory. They all privately tore down Sidney Powell. We have some new information here where Tucker did what we know he already did in previous text, which is say this person is bananas, and then give them a platform. And then Fox at a corporate level rebroadcasts, re-airs that after they've been put on notice that it was false and allegedly defamatory. What does that do in a case like this, Renato?
Well, I think that's really the whole ball game. I mean, really the hard part of the defamation suit, there's multiple challenges, okay? So one of it's proving damages, although here in Dominion, in the case of Dominion, obviously it's going to damage their voting machine operations if officials across the country have to deal with the public that doesn't believe that their products are fair and that they can have a fair election using their software. But putting all of that to the side, I think the main issue is always proving that you knew that this was false. You got a reckless disregard for the truth. And there's just so much here. I mean, another piece of it, to go to what Murdoch was saying, you're talking about Murdoch's bad faith. There's a email where he says it's very difficult if you're behind in all these states to come back from that. It's very difficult to be crying foul if you're losing in all of these different states. And he lists Arizona and Pennsylvania, all these states. Well, he knew that. So he's saying that in an email. He knew that this was very difficult to overturn. And yet, he nonetheless was allowing this to go forward on his platform. And it's just hard because Rupert Murdoch ultimately is responsible for what's occurring on his television network. That's just very difficult for them to overcome.
Yeah, and Renato, you know your way around a courtroom. You're telling us some of this stuff rises to the level of the winning evidence or the smoking gun evidence. I will repeat what I've said before. Fox denies all of the wrongdoing, and they claim, although frankly some of the facts here don't match this, but their defense is these were newsworthy claims from big newsworthy people, including the outgoing president, so they had to, quote, report on it. That's their side. We've also extended opportunities to them if they want to come on and join. Some have referred to you, Che, as the Godot of this segment, waiting. Was it not 50 Cent who said he's been patiently waiting for a track to explode on in his first album?
Right.
That's you now. You've been patient. Your thoughts on all the above, and on the political side, these are backroom, high-level dealings that almost never come out about any company in America, media or otherwise. The suit has forced them out. What are you seeing here?
Well, I know we have a long way to go with this lawsuit, but based on this breaking news and everything that we've seen, this feels to me like a watershed moment, not just for American media, but really for American politics. The conservative movement for 50 years has basically operated like this. They've created, a reality distortion field. That's a phrase from the TV show Star Trek. It was used to describe Donald Trump, Steve Jobs, etc. These aliens in Star Trek created this reality distortion field where you walked into it and you were in an illusion. And what the conservative movement has done for 50 years, going back to direct mail in the 70s, talk radio in the 80s, Fox News in the 90s, on to today with Breitbart, things that they're pushing on Facebook, Twitter, etc., and social media, is they've created a reality distortion field. And what we're seeing, I feel for the first time, is the illusion of Donald Trump winning the 2020 election is running into the reality of the Dominion lawsuit. They were so arrogant in believing that they could maintain this reality distortion field forever. And they've certainly maintained it for like decades at this point. That for the first time you're seeing that field being turned off. The illusion is running out of steam, and we're seeing the reality finally set in.
It is Wednesday, the 8th of March of 2023, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner the English Bulldog is our snoozing sous chef, and our daily special is Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. Will no one rid us of these meddlesome priests? Will no one? Yes, no one. Well, they say eggs are quite expensive now, and but it only takes two to make a proper smothered Benedict. And we know that it's a lovely egg dish with a velvety hollandaise sauce. Ooh, my gosh. Don't put too much lemon in it now. We like it a little tart, but be careful. So, how are you? Yes. I apologize. We missed a day. Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. We missed it, and I fully intended to have something in place. But Monday got quite busy with weather repairs, and dogs that were sick that had to go to the vet, moms who, want to walk away from their walker and then start to take a tumble. And then when you catch them, they cut their arm on the edge of a table or something like that. And it doesn't take much. Her skin is gossamer thin. You can't put adhesive tape on it either. It'll just tear. I mean, it's crazy. So, and then just all the other attendant issues leading up to tomorrow, so I was not able to do anything beforehand. So then I fully intended, after getting my sister to her medical appointment and procedure, and she was quite loopy afterwards. And just there was some what's it called? A ablayment? A blablet? It's where they're cauterizing some nerves so that she's not such agony in this lower back pain that she has right now. So there. I didn't sell the medical information, so I'm not violating HIPAA. All right? But anyway, I thought that maybe when I came back, I could put something together, but then I had to take care of the dogs. And the one dog that my mom's dog, the little Yorkshire thing with the little high-pitched yip and barking. And I love her anyway. But she's getting old and has some kidney issues, and so moving her on to a different diet and taking care of her a bit. And then I just got hit by massive fatigue. I apologize. I wasn't able to do anything for yesterday, but here we are today. And do we have a day ahead of us? Oh my gosh. But anyway, once again, I apologize for missing a day. I had this theater thespian attitude that the show must go on no matter what. No matter what. I mean, the bombs could be exploding all around and even inside, but you gotta have the show go on. And it was hard, but I just decided maybe I needed to have some me time. And some me time meant when I could nap, I fell into deep REM. Oh my. So that was good. I felt rested somewhat. I always heard this axiom that getting old is not for the weak, and I thought it was a joke. Oh my God. You have to be Superman to survive old age. And I'm not even that old yet. Old enough. Anyway, here we are. And we are going to... did you know that Tucker Carlson seems to be bought off by Russia? I don't know what's going on here. Is he being isolated at Fox News? Is he the one that's going to take a fall? I thought, during that News of the World scandal where they were hacking phones of the 2007 London plane or train crash or something, the people, the victims of that, dead people and people in the hospitals, they hacked their phones, and some little school girl had been murdered and they pretended that she was still alive, to sell papers. And, that is just crazy stuff. But when it was all said and done, it got, that thing got blamed on the big-haired redheaded gal that worked there, Rebecca something. I can't remember her last name all of a sudden. But anyway, so I figured they were going to lay all of this current stuff with Dominion, etc., at the feet of a woman executive now. But I don't know. Are they going to do it to Tucker? I don't quite understand what's going on, except when you look and peel it back a little bit. You had Brett Baer basically taking Tucker's assessment of this raw data that was dumped in their laps to task. But not everyone's mentioning that he was on the same network as this guy Tucker Carlson. So I don't know what's going on here. Is that going to boost ratings? That within the Fox environment, the Fox reality, whatever it is from Star Trek, that the viewership will look upon that and say, wow, there's factions that are telling us the truth, and there are factions that are not telling the truth, and boy, this is going to keep our eyes just glued to this. We don't even have to go outside the bubble to decide which part of the bubble is the good bubble and which part of the bubble is this evil bubble. And the evil bubble in that particular viewership seems to be the truth itself. If Fox News said that the earth was flat, viewership would say, damn right, keep lying. Because when you lie, it means you love us. What an abusive amount of people believe in that. Oh my God. Okay. I don't know. It's crazy. It's crazy town stuff. And I don't want to be ableist when I talk about that, but it is crazy. They're saying that Fetterman is unfit to serve because he admitted to being depressed. And yet, the pathological murderer is on their side. And I mean that I'm not being rhetorical. They're elevated. They embrace it. Jesus, even down to like little teenagers who are crossing state lines and acquiring guns and attaching themselves to white nationalist militias roaming the streets because of protests where black people were protesting for the continuous killings by cops, putting their knee on the throat until they're dead. And people got a little upset about that, and white nationalists said, well, we're going to have to go out there and protect the streets because this is the time they're all going to kill us in our sleep. And they put a military-type weapon in the hands of a little kid with his tactical vest and everything. And the people that live there said, look at these mofos coming into our town. We're not going to allow this to happen. And the little kid blasted some people to death, or near to it, maimed for the rest of their lives. And he's elevated as a hero. At least within the confines of that bubble. Okay. Well, any monies that guy gets, he should be sued in civil court for the murder of those people that lived in that town. And that judge that sat in that little monster's trial, I think that judge should be held up for censure. But that's just me. I'm a romantic. But that's all small potatoes now, isn't it? Yep. We got Tucker Carlson just doubling down in the midst of a lawsuit in which a company was defamed and could have had their profits impacted. And that's a lot more important. If that's the only way that you can bring the truth to court, and when I say the truth, I mean the defense of the truth with a capital T, it's got to be tied to profit or lack thereof, to expose this propaganda outfit for what it is and what it always has been and what we said it was, and we were told, no, we have to pretend that they are a legitimate news organization. All right. So in the meantime, we got this guy coming from out of the country, coming over here, bringing his propaganda outfit here, ingratiating himself with all the mucky mucks in upper society, gets his citizenship fast-tracked so he can establish his propaganda outfit, and now look where we are. They're And now they're talking about deporting people who actually love America. Yes, I know. We're the evil ones. We're trying to ram our values and our ideology right down their throats. While not having the self-reflection to know that they are Nazis at heart. And how dare they try to supplant their values with our American values, what they might be. Now, American values admits our weaknesses and our mistakes, and maybe we need a little bit of help so that we can heal ourselves. What is wrong with that? I'm not going to heal. Oh, is that how you're going to argue with me now? You're not going to heal. I don't need to heal. I'm perfectly normal. Oh, really? I'm going to tell you right now, buddy, beating your wife is not the values that we want in our society. You can't tell me that I can't be a wife beater. You know what? Because you're a wife beater and you're so intransient, we're not going to allow you to have a gun. In fact, we're going to put a red flag up so that you don't get a gun. And then that person is defended as being the exalted American. You're taking the rights away from exalted Americans. Okay, here we are. Foreign national sets up shop here. Has a history of doing this type of disinformation in various media venues. Been taken to court. You know, they can't show Fox News in a lot of different countries in Europe because it violates the law of not only decency, but the truth with a capital T. Here in America, oh yeah, the truth is fungible. It just is whatever you want it to mean, like McCarthy says. I didn't see the tapes. You know, people can look at those tapes and they can draw whatever the meaning they want. No, you don't. You don't look at the tape and go, oh, well, that person's really floating up when they're really just walking. Oh, no, I see that person's floating up. No, you don't. They're walking. Okay. All meaning is whatever I as an individual determines it to be. Well, that's not how a society works, I'm sorry to say. Okay. You know, you learn a lot of things on the commune. There are some people that just don't want to help out in the gardens. They don't want to, like, clean up in the, you know, they want to cook. And so, you know, you kind of, like, want to shun them, don't you? Yeah. Even on the commune. All right. I suppose there's always folks who are just so entitled that they want to live a world of their own making regardless of the facts of life. Regardless of it. Okay, well. Who's the hippie now, huh? Okay, what is on the rest of the menu here as we embark on this fabulous Smothered Benedict Wednesdays? Yeah, we're getting back up to speed. Missing a day? Yeah, you know how it goes. Anyway, on the rest of the menu, a federal judge ruled that a Missouri law banning local police from enforcing federal gun laws is unconstitutional and void. Wow, that's a win. I wonder how long that'll last. The National Transportation Safety Board opened probes of Norfolk Southern rail accidents, and they were having quite a few, and people are dying. Their own people are dying. What few of them work on these trains? And U.S. health officials are recalling 2 more eye drop brands due to contamination that could lead to vision problems and serious injury. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where German police have disrupted a ransomware cybercrime gang tied to Russia that has been blackmailing large companies and institutions for years. And Chinese ships have cut the internet of Taiwan's outlying islands. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the right of the page is the chat room link, and the chat room is monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. Across the page from that chat room link that is near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com is the link to our Patreon page. And thank you to those of you who have become recurring Patreons of Netroots Radio. I cannot tell you how much it helps. Bills keep going up, and your patronage helps us pay those bills and all the other attendant costs that it takes to run this powerhouse of resistance, and we thank you for doing so. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, Mastodon, and Spoutable, do so at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of all of those and so much more. Thank you, Tom. Follow me on Twitter, Mastodon, and Spoutable at Justice Putnam. I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Co's 10 minutes before showtime, and then I try to get that linked up on all of those. But, hey, sometimes you know how it works. Real life intrudes. But anyway, the show notes and links is where, of course, you can find the real reportage from the actual articles that we are drawing our inspiration from. And if you would like to follow the show on Twitter, do so at Cookbook West. And pick up podcasts, please do, at Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, etc., etc., etc. All right, this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Smothered Benedict Wednesdays, is out of the Associated Press by Summer Ballantine, or is it Ballantine? A Missouri law banning local police from enforcing federal gun laws is unconstitutional and void, a federal judge ruled yesterday, Tuesday. U.S. District Judge Brian Wims ruled the 2021 law is preempted by the federal government under the U.S. Constitution's Supremacy Clause. At best, this statute causes confusion among state law enforcement officials who are deputized for federal task force operations, and at worst, is unconstitutional on its face, Judge Weems wrote. Missouri Republican Attorney General Andrew Bailey, in a statement, said he will appeal the ruling. Of course he does. As Attorney General, I will protect the Constitution, which includes defending Missourians' fundamental rights to bear arms, Bailey said. We are prepared to defend this statute to the highest court, and we anticipate a better result at the 8th Circuit. Of course they do. The Missouri law has subjected law enforcement agencies who knowingly enforced federal gun laws without equivalent state laws to a fine of $50,000 per violating officer. Federal laws without similar Missouri laws include statutes covering weapons registration and tracking and possession of firearms by domestic violence offenders, the party of wife-beaters. Conflict over Missouri's law wrecked a crime-fighting partnership with U.S. attorneys that Missouri's former Republican Attorney General, now Senator Eric Schmitt, touted for years. Under Schmitt's Safer Streets initiative, attorneys from his office were deputized as assistant U.S. attorneys to help prosecute violent crimes. The Justice Department, which last year sued to overturn the Missouri law, said the Missouri State Crime Lab, operated by the Highway Patrol, refused to process evidence that would help federal firearms prosecutions after the law took effect. The city of St. Louis County, and Jackson County also filed a separate lawsuit over the gun law, which is pending. They said in a joint statement that they were encouraged by the ruling and complained about the passage of dangerous bills that make it more difficult to prevent gun violence in our communities. Kansas City Mayor Quinton Lucas, meanwhile, described the decision in a tweet as a monumental defense of the safety of our families, our police, and our neighborhoods. The city is planning to file a brief in support of the pending lawsuit detailing its opposition to the law. Wims said police can now work with federal partners without worrying about breaking the voided law. State and local law enforcement officials in Missouri may lawfully participate in joint federal task forces, assist in the investigation and enforcement of federal firearm crimes, and fully share information with the federal government without fear of HB 85's penalties, the judge wrote. Several Missouri prosecutors had testified against the bill, saying it jeopardized investigations and prosecutions against serious offenders while exposing state and local officers to civil liability. Funk and John Sewer of the Associated Press brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Federal investigators are opening a wide-ranging investigation into one of the nation's biggest railroads after a fiery derailment on the Ohio-Pennsylvania border last month and several other accidents involving Norfolk Southern, including the death of a train conductor yesterday, Tuesday. The National Transportation Safety Board said yesterday it will begin a broad look at the company's safety culture, the first such investigation within the rail industry since 2014. The board said it has sent investigation teams to look into 5 significant accidents involving Norfolk Southern since December of 2021. The agency also urged the company to take immediate action to review and assess its safety practices. The Federal Railroad Administration also announced its own investigation of Norfolk Southern yesterday, Tuesday. The administration will issue a public report after conducting a 60-day safety assessment, according to a release from the U.S. Department of Transportation. In the release, the Railroad Administration said Norfolk Southern must go beyond the steps it announced on Monday and take actions that match the severity of recent incidents. Norfolk Southern CEO Alan Shaw pledged to hold a series of company-wide safety meetings today, one day ahead of when he is scheduled to testify in Congress at a hearing on the East Palestine, or is it Steen, Ohio derailment. Moving forward, we're going to rebuild our safety culture from the ground up, he said in a statement. We are going to invest more in safety. This is not who we are. It is not acceptable, and it will not continue. Which is shorthand for, they got caught cutting corners to save on costs, to make more money. Back to the article at hand. In response to the Ohio derailment, the railroad on Monday announced plans to improve the use of detectors placed along railroad tracks to spot overheating bearings and other problems. Investigators with the NTSB said the crew operating the train that derailed February 3rd outside of East Palestine got a warning from such a detector but could not stop the train before more than 36 cars came off the tracks and caught fire. Within the industry, Norfolk Southern has a strong reputation for being a safe railroad over the years, said Christopher Barkin, director of the Rail Transportation and Engineering Center at the University of Illinois. Federal Railroad Administration statistics show accidents involving Norfolk Southern is down since 2019, but the rate of accidents is up over the past decade. The 119 derailments involving Norfolk Southern last year, 119, just from one company. And that was the lowest number in the last decade, whereas industry-wide, there were more than 1,000 derailments last year. But pressure is mounting on the railroad in the aftermath of the East Palestine disaster. Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg said the nation's freight railroads in February to immediately act to improve safety while regulators were focusing on strengthening safety rules. Buttigieg said the department will hold the railroad accountable for any safety violations that contributed to the February 3rd crash. Press brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. U.S. health officials are alerting customers about 2 more recalls of eye drops due to contamination risks that could lead to vision problems and serious injury. The announcements follow a recall last month of eye drops made in India that were linked to an outbreak of drug-resistant infections. 1 person died and at least 5 others had permanent vision loss. There's no indication the latest recall are related to those products. The FDA posted separate recall notices for certain eye drops distributed by PharmaMedica and Apotex after the company said they had voluntarily pulled several lots of their products from the market. Both companies said the recalls were conducted in consultation with the FDA. PharmaMedica on Friday said it was recalling 2 lots of purely soothing 15% MSM drops due to problems that could result in blindness. Well, that's soothing. The over-the-counter drops are designed to treat eye irritation. The Phoenix-based company said consumers should immediately stop using the drops and return them to the place they were purchased. The recall affects nearly 2,900 bottles, according to the company. The drops were manufactured in Arizona. Last week, the FDA posted a separate recall announcement from Apotex, recalling 6 lots of prescription eye drops used to treat a form of glaucoma. The company said it launched the recall after finding cracks in a handful of bottle caps. The drops are distributed as brimonidine tartrate ophthalmic solution 0.15% and were sold between last April through February. Apotex said in an email the eye drops were manufactured in Canada, and the company has not received any reports of injuries related to the drops. All right, well, look for them in your shelves. And that brings us to our break. And when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. This week, Big and High. The last time you saw a bear full of coke, it was probably a teddy stuffed with it on a bad 70s TV cop show. But in fact, in the 1980s, a real bear in the Georgia mountains fatally ingested a large quantity of coke, which had been tossed out of an airplane by a smuggler. Later, the creature was stuffed and ultimately purchased by country music icon Waylon Jennings. So there's a movie in there somewhere, right? You betcha, especially if the little black bear is now an enraged 700-pound grizzly, bungling drug dealers are combing the wilderness for their goods, and hapless forest rangers and local residents are stumbling into the action. From director Elizabeth Banks, we get Cocaine Bear, which was a meme before opening in its first theater, and which lives up to the hype. It's gory, think numerous creature features, or maybe Winnie the Pooh Blood and Honey, but with lots of humor. From one-liners to silly gags and sequences, like one especially uproarious and well-choreographed one with the bear chasing an ambulance. A movie like this promises humor after the fact, too, if you read reviews. Even after disclaimers about the occasional cool popcorn movie, some reviewers are still evaluating the efficacy of the subplots and snootily discounting it all because, hey, someone could have just shot the bear, right? The era, the 1980s, and the terrain, Georgia, bring to mind the absurdist TV hoot from back in the day, Dukes of Hazzard, and that's still bringing in royalties 40 years on. It's probably best here just to relax and enjoy Isaiah Whitlock, O'Shea Jackson, Margot Martindale, Ray Liotta in his last role, and others just dealing with the Cocaine Bear. The World Series issues will still be available for overthinking after you leave the theater. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
When Judy Heumann arrived at kindergarten, the principal wouldn't let her in.
I'm Lily Ledbetter, and this is a Civil Liberties Minute with ACLU attorney Bill Newman.
And years later, although qualified as a teacher, they wouldn't let her teach either. For the same reason, Judy Heumann's mobility depended on a wheelchair. In 1970, having attained all the necessary degrees and requirements, she was denied a job as a teacher in New York City because the school system said teachers had to be able to accompany students out of the building quickly in case of an emergency. And Judy Heumann said she moved faster in a wheelchair than most pedestrians. There was a big public fight, and eventually the school system relented, and Judy Heumann became New York City's first teacher in a wheelchair. And her fight for civil rights had just begun. She led the fight in the 1970s for Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act, which outlawed discrimination against disabled persons by any institution receiving federal money. She fought both for the passage of the law and its implementation, and then fought successfully for the 1990 Americans with Disabilities Act, which broadened the protections of Section 504 to the private sector and to other areas of public life. Judy Heumann changed many, many lives, everyone's life, for the better. We mourn her passing in early March at the age of 75.
The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1924. That was the day that tragedy struck at the Utah Fuel Company mine in Castle Gate, Utah. The mine stood about 90 miles southeast of Salt Lake City. Coal mining began at Castle Gate in 1888. On the fateful day of the explosion, at 8 in the morning, 2 violent blasts ripped through the number 2 mine. 20 minutes later, a third explosion went off. According to an investigation by the Bureau of Mines, the explosions inside the mine were extremely violent and reached all parts of the mine. 171 miners were killed instantly. Those who died reflected the diversity of those who worked in the mines. There were 49 Greeks, 22 Italians, 8 Japanese, 7 English, 6 Australian, 2 Scotch, 1 Belgian, and 76 Americans, including 2 African Americans. They left behind a combined total of 241 children and 25 pregnant wives. Rescue efforts were impeded by the poisonous gases and fire raging in the mine. Rescuers donned helmets to attempt to reach those below. One rescue leader, George Wilson, died from the carbon monoxide when his nosepiece separated from his helmet. It's believed the explosion occurred when one of the bosses attempted to relight the flame on his headlamp. At the time, he was investigating a pocket of built-up gas in the mine. The flame ignited the gas and built up coal dust. The previous shift had kicked up the dust, and it had not been adequately watered down. This contributed to the explosions. It took 9 days to recover all of the bodies of those who died. The families of those killed were provided about $64 a month by the company and the state of Utah for several years after the tragedy. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. We always begin, whether from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 31 degrees Fahrenheit. Continuing with our winter weather advisory, we did have a bit of snow last night, and things are quite crusty out there as we speak. Expecting highs in the upper 30s to low 40s. Cloudy this morning with showers, rain showers, developing later on this morning. And expecting, about 1/10 of an inch, they say. Could be a little bit more. Winds out of the southwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Cloudy tonight. Lows in the upper 20s to low 30s. They say winds light and variable. And then cloudy tomorrow with rain developing later in the day. Highs expected in the upper 40s, winds out of the east-southeast at 5 to 10 miles per hour, and expecting rainfall near 1/4 inch just tomorrow during the day, with about that much coming in tomorrow night. Pollen is still rated as none here in our little town of Rogue River. The air quality index for the region is in the upper reaches of the good range at 38 parts per million. And that daytime UV index has notched back up into moderate at level 3. Barometric pressure is rising at 30.06 inches. Visibility is at 6 miles. And relative humidity is at 98%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. London is 35 degrees and it's snowing. Paris is 55 and mostly cloudy. Rome is 61 and partly cloudy. Kyiv is 44 and mostly cloudy. Kabul is 48 degrees and clear. Hong Kong is 68 degrees and fair. Tokyo is 55 and partly cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 68 and clear. San Francisco, California is 46 degrees and partly cloudy. And New York is 42 degrees Fahrenheit and sunny. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. Frank Jordan of the Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. German police said they have disrupted a ransomware cybercrime gang tied to Russia that has been blackmailing large companies and institutions for years, raking in millions of euros. Working with law enforcement partners including Europol, the FBI, and authorities in Ukraine, police in Dusseldorf said they were able to identify 11 individuals linked to a group that has operated in various guises since at least 2010. The gang behind the ransomware, known as Doppelpaymer, appears tied to Evil Corp, a Russia-based syndicate engaged in online bank theft well before ransomware became a global scourge. Among its most prominent victims were Britain's National Health Service and Dusseldorf University Hospital, whose computers were infected with Doppelpaymer in 2020. A woman who needed urgent treatment died after she had been taken to another city for treatment. Dirk Kunze, who heads the cybercrime department with the North Rhine-Westphalia State Police, said at least 601 victims have been identified worldwide, including 37 in Germany. Europol said victims in the United States paid out at least $42.5 million to the gang between May of 2019 and March of 2021 to release important data that was electronically locked using the malware. The group specialized in big game hunting, said Kunze, and ran a professional recruitment operation, luring new members with the promise of a paid vacation and asking applicants to submit references for past cybercrimes.
Je te donne, c'est mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer. Mes automnes, quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Weijang Wu and Johnson Lay of the Associated Press brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. In the past month, bed and breakfast owner Chen Yu Lin had to tell his guests he could not provide them with the internet. Others living on Matsu, one of Taiwan's outlying islands closer to neighboring China, had to struggle with paying electricity bills, making a doctor's appointment, or receiving a package. For connecting to the outside world, Matsu's 14,000 residents rely on 2 submarine internet cables leading to Taiwan's main island. The National Communications Commission, citing the island's telecom service, blamed 2 Chinese ships for cutting the cables. It said a Chinese fishing vessel is suspected of severing the first cable some 31 miles out at sea. 6 days later, on February 8th, a Chinese cargo ship cut the second. Taiwan's government stopped short of calling it a deliberate act on the part of Beijing, and there is no direct evidence to show the Chinese ships were responsible. The islanders, in the meantime, were forced to hook up to a limited internet via microwave radio transmission, a more mature technology as backup. It means one could wait hours to send a text, calls would drop, and videos were unwatchable. Apart from disrupting lives, the loss of internet cables, seemingly innocuous, has huge implications for national security. As the full scale of Ukraine has shown, Russia has made taking out internet infrastructure one of the key parts of its strategy. Some experts suspect China may have cut the cables deliberately as part of its harassment of the self-ruled island it considers part of its territory, to be reunited by force if necessary. Well, that's a little saber-rattling. And that also brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up here tomorrow for Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we will meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme aux langues de golfe clair. T'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.